You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. We are talking to Professor Hersh Shefrin, who is in the Department of Finance at Santa Clara University's Leavey School of Business. He's a pioneer in the world of behavioral finance. He's published broadly. He's written a number of books, including a fascinating book called Beyond Greed and Fear. Professor, I'd like to welcome you to the show and ask you to start by telling us, what is behavioral finance all about?
Thank you so much, Doug. So behavioral finance is a field. It's the field of that studies how psychology impacts financial decision-making and financial markets.
Okay. Is this something that's unusual?
It shouldn't be unusual. So Keynes, the famous economist from the 30s, talked about the impact of psychology on finance and economics a lot. But ever since the end of World War II, economists got it into their heads that they didn't actually have to incorporate psychology into their analyses and models and perspectives. And so for many decades, psychology just didn't wind up being a part of the toolkit that economists use to understand the world. And they educated their students that way, and it kind of fell into fashion. And then it came back into fashion, but with a lot of controversy, starting in the 1970s. I don't know whether you're familiar or not with the works of psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in fact, let me just make a note. Kahneman was on our show a little while back. If for people who are tuning in now and want to hear what he had to say, they can download the podcast of that interview with Daniel Kahneman at the radio shows tab of www.profile-financial.com. And I know, Professor, that you've done a lot of research on his research.
That's right. My early work in behavioral finance built heavily on the psychological concepts and frameworks that he and Tversky pioneered in the late 60s and early 70s. And I do have to say that they structured their studies in a way that could speak to economists. So there are lots and lots of psychologists. It's a huge area. And many of the concepts that psychologists use just didn't resonate with economists. But I think that they knew how to speak in a way that's really communicated across the interdisciplinary boundary. And so their work is particularly important. One of the biggest insights they had was that when people find themselves in a situation where they may have to accept a very unpleasant outcome, something that psychologically they would code as a loss, mm-hmm. that raises the tendency to seek risk in an attempt to avoid the loss. And in work I did with my Santa Clara colleague, Mayor Statman, in the 1980s, one of the things that we did was to apply that concept to the way that investors deal with losses in their portfolio, and to understand exactly what loss means mentally. It could mean many things. It could mean, for example, how much you've lost in the last day or two or week or year. But it could also mean how much you've lost relative to the day you bought, say, a particular stock. So the original purchase price becomes the reference point. And what we hypothesized was that original purchase price was particularly salient and important for the way that individual investors think, and that if they wound up in a situation where they were incurring paper losses on an investment, that would make it very hard for them to go ahead and to sell that loser, realize that loss because of the psychological pain that's involved, even if it made financial sense to actually sell.
So it's interesting you point that out, because as my day job is that I'm a financial advisor, so I work with clients all the time looking at their portfolios, and I would say that one of the most common questions we have when looking at the portfolios, the client says, well, what did I pay for it? And I always say, well, let's not look at that yet. Let's look at where do you think this is going to go in the future. In other words, if you own real estate stocks, do you think they're going to go up or down? And they say, yeah, that's all well and good, Doug, but did I make or lose money? And I think what you're pointing out is that people should not necessarily ask that question. They should ask where they think it's going to go and make a decision based on what they expect to happen rather than on what happened in the past.
Yeah, it's very hard. Our minds are structured to be evaluators, and most of us hate to feel stupid. Investors in particular hate to feel stupid. And so we're always looking for ways that will help soothe our egos in that respect. We do have these psychological needs. It's not as if we don't have them. We can't pretend that they don't exist, because they're going to make themselves manifest in some form or fashion. And so really the question is how to finesse them so that they don't wind up driving us to make inferior decisions. There was a great trainer for stockbrokers named Leroy Gross. He is no longer alive, unfortunately, but he wrote this brilliant manual called The Art of Selling Intangibles. And he didn't study behavioral. He didn't understand behavior. Do you have the book?
My mother. I started on Wall Street about 20 years ago, and I was partners at the time with my mother, who was a vice president at Dean Witter, which no longer exists in that form. It's now Morgan Stanley. And I remember when she was in stockbroker school, studying for her exams, I remember she came home with a big book. It was a big hardcover book called The Art of Selling Intangibles. So they used that.
Well, I don't know if you have a copy of that. It's a real treasure.
I got to find it.
It was a big book. I think it was kind of brick colored, if I recall.
Right, a big hardcover book, and yeah, that's funny.
So he was a real a real genius at understanding how investors thought. He didn't formally study behavioral finance at all, but his intuition about human psychology and investor psychology in particular was, I think, very acute. And so he understood, for example, this tendency to focus intently on original purchase price. And so he would tell his students, people who were in stockbroker school, look, when you come into a situation like this as a broker, you can use some magic selling words to help your clients overcome the inertia of not wanting to sell because current price is below original purchase price. And the magic selling words are, I would suggest you transfer your assets. And the reason that those are magic selling words is because they induce a mental operation that is different from the normal operation. The normal operation, when we actually engage in a sale mentally, is we have a mental account, a little portion of our brain that keeps track of what's going on. And if you close the account because you sell, that's what generates this emotional pain inside. But if you transfer, you don't actually engage in the mental operation of closure. And so you leave the account open and you get the funds into a different account. And what that does is it effectuates the decision you want without the accompanying mental baggage, without the negative side effect. So
the pain of feeling that you sold at a loss.
Right. Because that pain isn't just, so, there was this really interesting study that came out in the last year, done by a Finnish researcher, and what she did was she looked at behavior differences between stocks that you buy yourself and stocks that you inherit. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you could incur a loss on either one, but the stock that you bought yourself, you feel responsible for. The stock that you inherited, somebody else is responsible for. It's much easier to sell a stock that you inherited than a stock you actually bought. Because when you sell a stock that you bought, you have to face up to the fact you made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for people because they take a hit to their egos, their self-image, their sense of their social position. All of that winds up impacted. And of course, that's not a statement about their wealth directly, but it is a statement about something that's really important to themselves. And our portfolios are, satisfy both financial needs and psychological needs. We kind of have to pay attention to both.
It's interesting that you say that, although anecdotally, I'm not sure that that's been my evidence. We're talking to Professor Hersh Shefrin, who's from the Department of Finance at Santa Clara University's Leavey School of Business. He's an expert in behavioral finance, and we're just about nearly out of time, but I just want to comment on this, which is whether people are more inclined to sell inherited stocks or stocks that they themselves bought. One of the things that I've seen as a financial advisor just working with clients is sometimes I'll get, for example, a widow comes in, and she said, my husband died, and he was a brilliant stock picker, and he owns these stocks, and I don't really want to sell them. And then I asked her, well, when did your husband pass away? And she said, 25 years ago. I said, well, maybe things have changed since then. I'm sure he was a great stock picker, but perhaps the world has come full circle, and there's something different, like the internet, or those companies don't exist anymore. But I think it's interesting that sometimes people will hold on because the person who bought it is someone who they respect so much, as opposed to just needing to have their own self-respect.
That's right. So we don't know, in the finished data, the degree to which the story that you just related is germane. My guess is, from what you've said, first of all, I relate to this story. I relate to this story because it affects not just widows, as you described it. It affects the directors of major foundations. So we know, for example, that the Packard Foundation held, which was a very large foundation, one of the largest in the U.S., held only one stock in its portfolio, and that was Hewlett-Packard stock. And they did it because the daughter of Packard was especially had the same mental relationship to her father and her father's company as the widow you described. And of course, that was a major problem for the diversification in that endowment's experience.
That's a real issue. Listen, Professor Shefrin, we're just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, could you just tell people how they could follow your work and learn more about what research you've done?
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I think probably the easiest thing is to Google me and to go onto my Santa Clara website and to just check out my CV and see what's popped up. The last book I wrote was a book called Ending the Management Illusion. It came out a couple of years ago. I'm particularly proud of that book because one of the things I did in that book, and I've actually talked about it on my previous visit to Israel, was to talk about the implications of the ideas in that book for the behavior of BP, the energy company. And I think that kind of has implications for how Israel manages, for example, is it Tamar, the new gas field? Yeah. So I think that there are implications, to financial planning and beyond.
Fabulous. Professor Hersh Shefrin, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure talking with you, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.